Ladies and gentlemen, let's take the opportunity to get deep into the latest standoff that is happening with the Canadian establishment of Justin Trudeau. As we speak, India has put out a message to the Canadians in no uncertain terms that we are expecting as a country for Justin Trudeau's administration to abide by the Vienna Convention when it comes to the basic logic of what is taking place, including what has happened recently in Brampton and other areas. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the to and fro this is happening. You heard what the Canadian Trade Minister had to say, basically saying that the trade agreement with India is on hold. This happened just a few days ago. She wanted us to focus on the Niger issue. Ambassador Jaishankar, who was in London up until yesterday, also spoke on the matter. He said, we are not shying away from a probe, but we are yet to receive any ounce of evidence from the Canadians. The events that you see are taking place in Canada right now, where not only Indian envoys were targeted, but Diwali celebrations were targeted by Khalistani elements. You can see them. Look at the violence with which they're disrupting the Diwali celebrations taking place. Now, I'm assuming this is free speech and so on and so forth. The stakes, ladies and gentlemen, however, are a bit larger. And they pertain to something rather simple once you put a nub to it. Can Justin Trudeau in this day and age bully India? Can he reasonably expect that he will receive the support of the United States, the UK, European powers, all of NATO to bully India? The emphatic answer in the past 1 month has been no. He cannot. He can't bully us, and we won't be bullied. The second question is Justin Trudeau willing to ensure that no Indian, Punjabi like me, Sikh or otherwise, looks at Canada as a studying and immigration opportunity? Well, that's for the Canadians to figure out. Let me quickly open up this conversation to put perspective into what is happening as we speak. Patikrit is joining us on the broadcast, while Awadh is joining us on the broadcast, as is Ambassador KP Fabian. Ambassador Fabian, now, you know, once the to and fro starts, it does continue, and we are watching it continue. We are waiting for evidence which has not appeared. The brinkmanship is still taking place. You heard what the Canadian Trade Minister had to say. In terms of trade, it's not more than an inconvenience to us if that trade agreement doesn't go through. But in the larger scheme of things, is Justin Trudeau stuck? Has he just stuck his neck out too much and he expected us to cover, to apologize, or to get pressured from other capitals, and that hasn't happened? So is he stuck now? Does he see no way out of this fracas?
Thank you. We have to look at the big picture, and I want to make one or two observations. One, both Canada and India seem to have, please mark my words, seem to have departed from classical diplomacy. Why? Because they seem to be talking to each other through the media and not directly. Now, this has to stop. It is in the interest of both Canada and India to de-escalate and bring this matter to an end so that normal relations are established. The third point is that there is no question Canada, like any other member state of the United Nations, is bound, I repeat, bound to respect the Vienna Convention and to carry out its obligations thereunder. Whether it's a question of ensuring the security of Indian diplomatic personnel, or whether it's a question of a part of the Indian community celebrating their festivals, it is incumbent on the government of Canada to lend protection. And if Canada has not done it, well, there is no excuse for it. But once again, I repeat, it is necessary for both India and Canada to go back to normal diplomacy, classical diplomacy, not this public diplomacy where, you escalate matters by talking to each other through the media. And coming to the trade minister's statement, well, obviously the trade minister would have told this through diplomatic channels, but still it seems the trade minister felt the need to go to the media. So this is what I find is something radically wrong.
Okay. Pathikrit, would it be appropriate if you and I put up hoardings with the photographs of the Canadian High Commissioner and his senior staff in parts of the national capital, maybe even in front of the Canadian High Commission? Would it be appropriate if a group of goons surrounded his car or the cars of the Consul General or other diplomatic staff? Would these be considered appropriate action? Would the Canadians find this, in keeping with freedom of speech and law and order if it were to happen in New Delhi?
Rishabh, that's where the difference is. As a country, we are mature, we are nuanced, that even when we have such disdain for Canada today, especially the government, for whatever they're doing, we will not go to that length. But unfortunately, the era of classical diplomacy is over, whether we like it or not. So the reality is, whatever the Canadians are doing today or tomorrow, there will be some kind of reciprocation. What I find it strange, Rishabh, that is it that Canadian government is so immature for whatever things they are doing right now, or is it that somebody has given them a brief that you keep on needling India, this is your task for the time being? And if it is that they have been given a brief or a task by somebody, I don't know, then perhaps Trudeau started with a lot of gung-ho, and then they found that, they are just one of the countries of North America. It is not United States of America that they think that they are. I don't think today they are getting the kind of traction or the support, that they expected. But like a broken record, he keeps on repeating the same thing. I think to a great extent, Trudeau is desperate for attention. And in the name of freedom of expression, whatever things that they are doing in terms of threatening diplomats, in terms of putting up placard of people who have assassinated, Indian prime ministers in the past, or celebrating the blast of the Kanishka flight, these are not, just freedom of expression. This is obnoxious. It is like justifying what Osama bin Laden has done. So to a great extent, I think Canada has crossed the breach and the Rubicon or the red line long time back. And unfortunately, the G7 countries seem to be okay with it. So I believe as India emerges far more competitive, goes towards the $5 trillion mark, you would see such things happening more from the West. I think a time would come when what you said would be right.
Okay,
because
so
perhaps
but
that's the language
there has to be an end game, right? So eventually there has to be an end game, right? So eventually sense has to prevail. Now, what do you suspect? Is a Justin Trudeau now simply, he's been so humiliated that he, as a political person that he is, requires a face saver. He just needs a face saver because this is a fight, he doesn't want to fight anymore. Or is he so wedded to the cause, so dependent on the brainwashing of Jagmeet and company, that he is convinced that his political future lies in completely destroying relations with India?
I think, Rishabh, you're right. Somewhere he is looking for an escape route, but he's certainly not going to get it. And at the same time, I think a section of the deep state of Canada is so much engrossed and invested into these Khalistani elements that it is very difficult for them to come out of it. I think I am not trying to be a devil's advocate for Trudeau. I have utter disregard for him for whatever he has done. But I think he is also under a lot of pressure. from certain quarters, be it within his own country or outside, that you keep on doing this thing. This is your task for the timing. Otherwise, I don't understand a country like Canada. I mean, on what basis they are trying to take on India with 140 crore people? Do they don't even understand the reality of where Canada stands today? You know, whether it is the Ukraine-Russia conflict or the Middle East crisis, nobody goes to Canadian Prime Minister seeking for advice or help or some kind of a measure. It is India, among other countries, being asked. Prime Minister Modi being asked. So what is wrong with Canada? There's a lot of introspection the people of Canada must need to do, the political parties must need to do, but we need to wait and see if the entire policy of Canada towards Khalistanis and other elements will change or not.
Yes.
That is something I am very, very concerned
so
about.
The proof of the pudding is in the eating. After all this, they took out some of the posters from the Gurdwaras in Surrey, but they were quickly replaced by others, equally obnoxious ones. Let's get a third-party perspective. Dr. Vailavad, what do you make of this? Because considering the number of global issues right now, I mean, there's a war on in Gaza, there is a war on in Ukraine, there's tension in Taiwan. I mean, there are so many serious issues all over the world. Even the India-Chinese association is not so publicly ugly right now. The India-Pakistani association is not so publicly ugly right now, but the Indian-Canadian one is. What's happened?
I think this has to do with the domestic law in Canada, where the revealing of certain involvement of India allegedly by the Prime Minister in the Parliament have made this public. As Ambassador Fabian was saying, it become more into the public domain rather than taking these issues to solve it bilaterally. Because when the Prime Minister of Canada was in India during the G20, he had a meeting with the Indian Prime Minister. And it seems he did reveal some of the mention about the investigation, but it was not fully. So Canada have not completed the investigation, but yet made a full allegation of India involvement. And Rishabh, let us also remember that the Five Eyes played a major role, especially the CIA, in feeding the Canadian with the inputs that they have been involving indirectly or directly India. That's why we see the American are backing Canada and their position. UK is backing Canada and their position and asking for a diplomatic solution to the problem. But I think because of the domestic compulsion on the prime ministers, he will not be able to find any common ground, at least for the current situation. And if not, a backdoor diplomacy can solve it. Having said that, I would say India have taken the aggressive step as well. India has taken a very bold step in a diplomatic row where they have expelled 41 diplomats from India, and also they have the trade also has been standstill. So the standoff between the two countries cannot be solved in a public domain. It has to be a backdoor diplomacy at least.
Dr. Vailavad, would it be appropriate for some of us to put up hoardings outside the Canadian High Commission to surround and heckle and threaten the Canadian envoys? Would that be appropriate?
I don't think this is India culture to do so. I don't think that
why
is
is it culture? Why is it Canadian culture?
Because you have lots of Indian community there, and those sympathizer with the Khalistani movement. It wasn't there, Rishabh. We have been following it for more than 3-4 decades of the Khalistani movement after the Golden Temple issues. We have seen them in Canada. We have seen them in the United States. We have seen them even issuing passport and a country, separate country. And then Canada has been the shelter to most of the hardcore Khalistanis activists. So I think we need to see it from a wider perspective of how they wanted to sabotage growing India as an emerging power, as an economic power, destabilizing by creating more supporting secessionist movement.
Okay, so and if a host country allows this to happen, the only takeaway that I am taking from here is that we should, at the very least, do everything possible then to destabilize Canada, because or at least host it. So a free Cubec movement, of which I should become a member, should be headquartered and funded from here. There should be free Cubec rallies taking place at India Gate for some reason, because there is some sort of reciprocity. So let me get Ambassador Fabian back into this conversation. Ambassador Fabian, when it comes to Five Eyes intelligence, all due respect to them, they recently missed the existence of 5,000 rockets in Gaza. Their intelligence there was not very accurate. but it was very accurate when it came to developments in Canada. But nonetheless, when an individual, sir, gets photographed with AK-47s, who has a murderous crime sheet available from a democracy, that kind of individual, sir, is unlikely even to get a foreign visa. You have to declare in a visa form whether you have criminal proceedings pending against you. If you and I were carrying around AK-47s and photographing ourselves like Niger was, you would be seen as dubious and suspect. Why have they doubled down in defending this man?
First of all, permit me to make a comment on your comment about the rockets from Gaza. The failure is that of Israeli Defense Forces, not of the Five Eyes. Okay, now coming to your question.
So you think Five Eyes warned the Israelis about 5,000 rockets and they knew it was going to happen?
No, listen, among the Five Eyes, only the United States is there. New Zealand is not there. Australia is not there. No, let's not get confused. It is primarily the responsibility of Mossad, of the Israeli Defense Forces to secure Israel. They failed to do that. But, let's not get involved with that that dance of death and destruction currently being played out in Palestine. Not only Gaza. When you said Gaza, you are not accurate. It is being played out in Gaza and on the West Bank. So it is being played out in Palestine. Anyway, let's move on. Coming to your statement that why is government of Canada defending Niger, well, whom you described and correctly described as someone who sort of, was carrying an AK-47, who might have, I don't know the facts, but who might have got a visa, not by telling the truth. All that may be so. But that is not the point. The point is, Canada is saying, whether right or wrong, Canada is saying that a Canadian citizen was killed on Canadian soil and that some Indian official was involved in it. Now, again, I'm not saying that Canada is right or wrong. But the point is, you have to see it from that point of view. Instead of focusing attention, how did Niger get a visa, what he was doing earlier. So that is the crux of the matter. And once again, I want to say that Prime Minister Trudeau, for him to have made that statement in the House of Commons and referring to, quote, credible allegations, unquote, no, that was not the right thing to do. He did something absolutely wrong when he made that statement.
Okay, so Ambassador Fabian, in your best estimation, is Justin Trudeau, who's also not just a prime minister, he's a political being and he has to face elections in his own country, is he doubling down simply because he has no option? He needs a face saver, he needs a polite way out of it. Sometimes you need that to exit it quietly. So is it waiting for a face saver, or is it simply because his political compulsions have now convinced him, or his certain would-be allies have convinced him, that he has no option, so he's wedded to this cause now?
Let me put it this way. If in diplomacy we want to resolve a problem, we do not talk in terms of face saver and all that. We resort to classical diplomacy and resolve it. And earlier, one of our distinguished commentators was saying, the era of classical diplomacy is over. What does it mean? Let us read the Charter of the United Nations. Are we sort of preaching that there should be anarchy in the international realm? No, India is not saying that. And India, which believes in Vasudevaiga Kudumbakam, doesn't believe in regime change. So let us deal with Canada. Let us stop demonizing Justin Trudeau. As I said, what he did was wrong. But don't demonize him. Don't personalize these matters. Proceed with calm, courage, and full understanding of the big picture.
Okay, let's not personalize it. Patikrit is so there can be two options. Either the option is you escalate it and you very much do personalize it. You hit where it hurts and you escalate it. You increase the brinkmanship. Or the other is, listen, let's be a lot more cautious going ahead, because why would we want to do it? Are the Canadians showing any inkling that they have due regard, due respect for India's very serious concerns regarding the headquartering of a secessionist force bent on the breakup of India within their territories?
Rishabh, as an independent, as a citizen of an independent country, I have the right to be enraged with whatever Canada is doing. And so far as United Nations is concerned, they could not even define till date what terrorism is. They could not solve or create a conflict resolution mechanism to prevent conflicts. So let's not talk about what UN Charter says. That's my personal opinion. So far as Trudeau is concerned, here is a person. During his father's regime, more than 260 Canadian citizens died in the Kanishka bombing. They did not bother to investigate that. And here is a plumber who died, who is a plumber. And then the whole Five Eye and everybody is running after that, and we have to believe, okay, so let's not demonize Trudeau. I mean, what has he done for the sake of India that we will be very nice to him? If we have to be nice towards Trudeau, then we have to be nice towards Pakistan and all the Hafiz Saids and the Lashkar-e-Toibas and
I think the point being made is you don't have to be nice, but you shouldn't personalize it. Should it be personal with Trudeau?
No, that is what they have started. Rishabh, we must remember the video that we created probably 2 months back during G20, and it became a huge popular in Canada because we spoke the truth that you cannot justify an assassination of a prime minister. You cannot have placards of terrorists in the name of free speech and then say that, okay, this is fine because we are a Western country. But if India does it, then it's wrong. That is where I think there is double standard, and it's important that we need to come out of those niceties and expose the hypocrisy. And I don't think the Canadians are willing to mend the ways. So let it be. And Dr. Awad, what he said is also very right. As India progresses, you would see much more like brickbats coming from the West. We don't need to, sever our ties with the West, but we need to be very careful because they neither want us to be imploding like a Pakistan, but they neither want us to be as competitive as China. So we would face things. And let me tell you my last point. These all things could have been done in a nice way by the Trudeau government. They did not do it. And it's not something happening for the first time. Every time they do what they're doing with Niger, the kind of radicalization that is happening in Punjab, the kind of impact, are they aware of it? And are we to remain silent just for the sake of nicety? Absolutely not. Personally,
I can refer to the murder of a Balochi activist in Toronto, which was not taken up in the Canadian Parliament. And she was a asylum seeker in Canada as well. But we can have this argument for a long period of time. Probably we will be happening. Vailabad, is there a pattern of events? Is this one incident that just went awry and it's become difficult? Or is it a pattern of events? Justin Trudeau shows up in India. He either forgets or deliberately brings a known Khalistani in his official entourage. Then the events that play out in Canada subsequently, we know they played out in London as well. And we know what's happening in Surrey and Brampton and in these areas. They seem to be actively encouraging it. Niger's own son has said that Canadian intelligence was often in touch with them. We know what happened in the prosecution of the Kanishka bombing. Nothing. Is there a pattern of events, sir?
Well, I think, Rishabh, the pattern of event, we have suffered the same thing in the Arab world when the Western world used to take most of the wanted radical elements and give them shelter and say in the name of democracy and freedom of speech. And when we asked for them, they said, you don't have democracy in your country, and they will seek an asylum. And after that, we realized that they sent them to play the havoc and create radicalization among the young people. So this has been happening, and we have been warning many governments, irrespective of what they are. They have warned the Western capital on these issues because that is a game, that's a tool they keep playing to achieve a political gain. I am not here to justify the killing of anyone, but the point is very clear. If it is happening, it's a zero-sum game that India is playing with Canada. And the more Canadians speak of this issue, the more India will be provoked. Therefore, if you have evidence, put it on the table. If you have anything to say, you just discuss it openly. If you don't want it to discuss it in a diplomatic way.
All right. So let me now just reverse that supposition which I'm making. Would it be appropriate for a march to be carried out in Delhi celebrating the assassination of John F. Kennedy or Abraham Lincoln, putting posters of Lee Harvey Oswald and calling him a hero? Would that be appropriate? Probably not. Would it be appropriate if a group of people, regardless of who they were, went and heckled any envoy. In fact, when Tibetan protests take place in Delhi outside the Chinese embassy, the Delhi police ensures that they are removed. So that would be inappropriate. Would it be appropriate for hoardings to be put with the faces of India's head of government, with the faces of India's envoys? Would that be appropriate? Probably not. Would it be appropriate for us to be the headquarters of the Irish Republican Army? Would it be appropriate for us to be headquarters of the Free Cubec movement? The answers to all of this would be no. So why is it okay in Surrey, and why does Justin Trudeau think we are okay with it? So yes, it is about Niger, but it is also about a pattern of events. It is perfectly okay for the Canadians to come and say that we are very seriously looking at those forces intent on the destruction of India through secessionism, at the terrorist charges, at the warnings, at the videos of them threatening to blow up aircraft. We are taking action against Pannu and all these individuals, but we have a deep concern that India allows us to take the action and does not feel the need or the imperative to break our sovereignty. That would be an appropriate position, but you don't hear that either. So if Justin Trudeau would act, he won't have to accuse us of taking action.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.